Alright, you sick bunch of stale Doritos. Boom. My fourth book narration, another Aron Beauregard story. In my first breakdown, a 25-part series take on The Playground by Aron Beauregard. If you have not listened to that, just scroll through my profile and you'll find it. I'm not repeating any of it because it's gross. I don't know why I keep subjecting myself to this, but trigger warning for gore, foul language, and literally everything. The author, Aron Beauregard, does not shy away from all of the ick. So I listened to it so you don't have to. So I listen to all my stories on Audible. Not sponsored, nor will I be sponsored, but I like to multitask when I listen to traumatic things. So luckily this story has a bunch of short stories in with it. The very first one is The Namesake, Try the New Candy, and I will break that down here in the first part. So yeehaw, let's go, and here is my cat in a box. Her name is Bing Bing. So in this first short story, the main character is Stanley, who is described as a mentally disabled man. He is a high school dropout with no diploma, and as a teenager, he strived to find a job that accompanied his educational boundaries. What we do understand about Stanley is that he's a sweet and dedicated young man who struggles with, some mental disabilities, but he's out there to do a good job. So immediately in the story, he goes to a grocery store and he finds a job flyer on one of the corkboards. And it is advertised as a vending machine restocker and operator. And what caught his eye is that, there was no educational background needed. So he's like, boom, that's a ticket to freedom. So his boss is a skeezy guy named Red, who hires Stanley because of his mental struggles. It's described in the book that he hires people like Stanley because they're easily exploitable in the business. He's just unlikable and he's kind of trash. So Stanley hits the 15-year mark working for Red. It was just those two in the business together. Red pulls Stanley into the office and sits him down. And Stanley's kind of nervous at this because Red has never really said anything nice to him. He's just kind of a really hands-off kind of guy. So Red congratulated Stanley on, never missing a day of work. He's always on time. He's never stolen any of the change or the snacks in the business. So Red hits Stanley with a proposition of, Stanley, I have 10 years left to retirement. I don't have any kids to take over the business. You and I have worked together for the last 15 years. How would you feel about taking over the business? But if you can buy the business from me for $10,000. When I retire in 10 years, you can buy the business from me. And during the duration from now to the 10-year mark, you would have worked off that deposit for the business, and you would probably make double once you take it over from me. Stanley's just like, for real? For real? Yes, Stanley, I would really like it if, you carried on the legacy of this vending machine business. You do such a great job. Wow, I'm actually good at something. Yeah, that would be awesome. I finally have purpose in life, and no one will think I'm a failure anymore. So, Stanley takes the proposition, and thus begins the 8-year timeline of working really hard, doubling the income and the money, and Red's pleased with the work, until women. Yes, a woman. Stanley walks into the office one day to see Red, and there is a much younger woman in there. Ironically, her name is Candy, getting all smoochy on Red. Stanley realized immediately down in his gut that I shouldn't have walked in and saw this intimacy. There's gonna be retaliation now. And boy, was he right. Candy, with the personality of all the garbage chicks at my high school, manipulative to the umpteenth degree, and uses her beauty first to get what she wants. Her character is described as beautiful on the outside, but complete frickin' garbage on the inside. Love it. So immediately it's known that Candy is kind of using Red for the money and the promises of taking over the business instead of Stanley. She pulls Stanley aside after a visit with Red, and she grabs his face with her hands, and then reaches down and grabs a handful of his balls and squeezes. Power move. Stanley's all like, bro, what are you doing? Stop. Candy has Stanley in this hold, and she's like, I heard what you plan to do with the business. You're gonna take it over. But that's not gonna happen. You do what I say, and I'm gonna take over the business. You can work under me and you can keep your measly job, but what I say goes. I'm going to take it over instead of Red. He wants me, not you. Or some crap like that. Stanley literally has the money to buy the business, but he's 2 years away from Red's retirement. He was on track and dead set on taking over the business. This is what this guy wanted for a long time. And of course, Candy had to waltz in and be like, big boob swinging energy, and we don't like that. Not from her. So since their talk, Stanley has kept his head down at work, worked twice as hard, never missed a day, and just really put in the effort to still be on track to take over this job. And Candy, in all of her toxic glory, went to Red and started some allegations against Stanley. Red pulled him into the office one day, and he's like, Candy told me what you did to her and how you look at her, and she's really uncomfortable with you, and if you keep this crap up, you're fired. Stanley is heartbroken and hurt, and he doesn't know how to tell Red that this is a lie. He doesn't know how to defend himself, and he just accepts that this happened. And after being released from Red's office, he goes into his car and has an emotional meltdown, and then he just snaps. With large bags of change in his car, he rushes to a hardware store nearby, tears streaming down his face, and murder in his heart. Stanley walks right into that hardware store and he buys a chainsaw. Bum, bum, bum. So by the end of the work days, Stanley typically has to go to the office to drop off the daily deposit of the change he collected in the vending machines. But Red won't be there that day. Candy will be in the office to accept the deposit. And this is where Stanley's plan comes into play. Stanley walks in with 2 large bags of change and is greeted by a not too happy Candy. She has the audacity to call this man some names in regards to his mental disabilities, such as some colorful language that is not okay here on the internet. Stanley, with murder in his heart and no fucks to give, grabs the large bags of change and starts beating the shit out of Candy. He rattles her brain, breaks her nose, and some other in-depth descriptions about blood and brains and skull cracking that I will not list here. After she's knocked out on the carpet, he goes into his car, retrieves the chainsaw, and chops her body up. Inside Red's office is this gold-plated vending machine as kind of office decor, has not been touched in years. Pristine! Stanley cuts her body up in such segments and shoves these body parts in all the little vending machine slots, and then coats the outside in blood and writes on the front, "Try the new candy." Hence, this picture. When Red comes in the office next day, bricked up and ready for some candy, he sees the atrocity before him, the mangled, mutilated body of his mistress. And Stanley was in there waiting for him, and beats him to death with some bags of coins. Stanley, of course, ends the story by going to prison and living his wonderful life in prison, enjoying not paying rent, and just living a life of decency. And there you have it, the first story of many.